After viewing John Carpenter's film Assault on Precinct 13 from 1976 at the Milan Film Festival, independent film producer Erwin Yablans and financier Mustafa Akkad sought out John Carpenter to direct a film for them about a psychotic killer that stalked babysitters. In an interview with Fangoria magazine, Yablans stated, "I was thinking what would make sense in the horror genre, and what I wanted to do was make a picture that had the same impact as The Exorcist." Carpenter agreed to direct the film contingent on his having full creative control, and he was paid $10,000 for his work, which included writing, directing, and scoring the film. He and his then girlfriend, Deborah Hill, began drafting the story of their 1978 film, Halloween.
I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient, waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it, or you can help me to stop it.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills, and for us here today, we are getting into spooky season, so welcome to spooky season with us here on Chills and Thrills. Connor here along with you, as well as my co-host Chris, as always, and today we are getting into one of my favorite horror franchises, one of the best horror franchises of all time, in my opinion, in the Halloween franchise, and this is a franchise and a film, this first Halloween film, that I got into at a very young age. I think I was watching this just after I turned 5 years old, roughly, the summer before I turned 6. So probably the summer of 99, roughly. Maybe in 98 is when I first seen this, but I had watched this on repeat continuously in the VHS days and when it used to play on TV. And this is the film that got me interested into horror and kind of really film in general. I mean, I went from this to watching The Nightmare on Elm Streets and Friday the 13th to Chucky and Leprechaun and The Blair Witch Project and pretty much every every like horror film that was around back then. My Bloody Valentine and Black Christmas, and like the everything that I have watched in horror started with me watching this film. I remember specifically when I was at a young age watching this, the first like couple Friday the 13th, Jeepers Creepers I seen at a very young age when that came out, and this film, it put, just, there's so much nostalgia from this film in my head that I'm waiting for a re-release. I know they did like a 35th anniversary re-release in theaters. Sadly, they weren't showing it around my area. I would have had to drive like 2 hours to see it in the theaters. So I'm waiting for maybe like a 50th anniversary re-release in theaters coming up. So maybe I'll get my chance to see it in theaters then. But Chris, I know you grew up on this as well. You're like a year or so older than me. So how do you feel about this first Halloween?
Oh, I mean, goes without saying that it's a classic. As you were explaining your story there, I was trying to trace my own history with the franchise, and I would say that the first one I probably watched would have been Halloween H2O, not in theaters, but on VHS after I used to spend summers with aunts and uncles and cousins, and they were like, they rented Bride of Chucky on VHS, they rented, Halloween H2O on VHS, and so like being with them, it was like, well, if you don't get too scared, you can watch this with us, that kind of a thing. And so Halloween H2O was my first one, and the house I lived in from kind of late 2001 when I was about 9.5 to early 2005. That house is like in that room. That's where I remember seeing like those couple of years was where I owned all of the Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street movies on DVD. Where I first saw them, like whether it was renting them from Blockbuster and then getting them on DVD for Christmas, birthdays, things like that. So I had them all and I watched them all pretty religiously. And yeah, sort of fell away from the franchise in the post DVD days. Never owned any of them on Blu-ray or anything like that. Of course, when the 2018 film came out, kind of folded me back into going and watching the original. I am 90. I am positive that there was a flashback cinema re-release of the original film that I went to a theater and watched. I'm positive of that. So it might actually be the oldest. It may actually be the oldest movie that I've seen in a theater since it was 1978. Oh no, I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey. So either way, excellent film, just classic. We'll get into it. You can't say enough about it, but looking forward to having a discussion about the whole franchise.
I remember this movie. This was the movie that I became like a little horror freak after this one. I was a little demented kid after I watched all these. I remember going to Spencer's and like seeing all like the Halloween like TV shirt or like with the poster on them on all the shirts, and they had like the Michael Myers like little like dolls. They were like a footer, or 18 a foot and a half tall, like 18 inches tall. And if you clicked it, it would play like the theme music. So I remember buying one of those with like, I don't know if it was like rummage sale money from selling like some of my old stuff or where I got this money, but I bought one of them. I remember having multiple different Michael Myers, like the Shatner masks. I remember getting dressed up and like dressed up as Michael Myers for Halloween and like always trying to scare my older sister, like hiding in her closet, when she got home from she was went like cheerleading practice in like 7th, 8th grade for her. She was 3 or 4 years older than me. So I'd like stand in her room and scare her. Like I became a little horror nerd and stuff like that because of this film here. So this one holds a special place.
I was definitely a horror nerd. There was definitely a few years there where I was just completely hooked in. I went as Ghostface once for Halloween. I never went as any of the other characters.
I remember dressing up as Ghostface once or twice.
Yeah, I went as Ghostface once as a kid. I kept that mask forever. Years after I stopped trick-or-treating, I kept that Ghostface mask. I remember going to like, these were the movies that kind of inspired me in the early days to go to different like movie based websites. I think there was one that was literally called like halloweenmovies.com or something like that, and you would go to the different pages, and each like synopsis page for each movie would have like a special audio clip or music that was unique to that movie that would play. And then I would read the plot summaries for these movies. Like I'd read the backs of the DVDs. Back in those days they had the insert cards with like the chapter titles. I would just like read everything that I could related to any movies that I bought. I'd read every word on the back of the box, things like that. So it definitely was like a stretch there where these horror franchises were just all I was watching.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't Halloween or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street for me or something like that, it was Godzilla or King Kong. Like Terminator. There were probably 10 like film franchises that from like 5, 6 years old until like 12, I was continuously watching on repeat when I had free time or when friends were over, anything like that. It was always these franchises that I went back to. And this first Halloween is something ever since I rewatched it when like you said, when the 2018 film came out, because I was like, all right, this is the 2018 one. It's getting rid of all the other sequels pretty much. We're starting over from we're going 40 years since the original. So I watched that original and then went and seen 2018. And I don't think I've rewatched this original since then in 28. Well, I'm lying. I watched it last Halloween for like, you have to watch a Halloween movie on Halloween. So I ended up watching the original one, and I kind of go through them. Like, one year I'll watch the third one on Halloween or the fourth one. I don't really do a marathon like some fans do, or like they still do on TV. But I do not go back to this one very often. And rewatching it for the podcast, I forgot how well made of a film it was for being almost 50 years old and being a horror film. A lot of these horror films don't get the credit they deserve. And I'm glad this one has gotten its praise.
Yeah, I hadn't had a franchise marathon in a long time. I watched this one when Halloween Kills came out. I showed my younger brother this one, the 2018 film, and then we went and saw Halloween Kills. But that was kind of the last time I watched multiple entries of these. Outside of that, anything beyond the first movie I have not watched since, probably 10 to 15, I mean, at least 10 years, probably 15 years at this point. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to go back through them all.
Absolutely. Let me hit you with some background on the 1978 film Halloween, and then we can get into a trailer and a plot synopsis and continue on diving into this film. Halloween is a 1978 American independent slasher film directed and scored by John Carpenter, co-written with producer Deborah Hill and starring Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut, with PJ Soles and Nancy Loomis in supporting roles in the film. Filming took place in Southern California in May of 1978, and the film premiered in October, whereupon it became one of the most profitable independent films of all time. Primarily praised for Carpenter's direction and score, many critics credit the film as the first in a long line of slasher films inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960 and Bob Clark's Black Christmas from 1974. It is considered one of the greatest and most influential horror films ever made. In 2006, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Halloween spawned a film franchise comprising of 13 total films, which helped construct an extensive backstory for its antagonist, Michael Myers, sometimes narratively diverging entirely from its previous installments. Additionally, a novelization and a video game, and then also a comic book series have been based on this first film. So there's a little background on the original Halloween from 1978.
Yeah, and in some regards, the Halloween franchise is something of a multiverse, something of an official multiverse. There are a number of horror franchises where they kind of have the entry or two where you can kind of skip them, and it doesn't really impede the kind of progress of the franchise. You can kind of skip over this one, skip over that one. But this one is like, it was always overtly clear that there were some of these movies that were in different continuity than other entries in the franchise, and that's happened multiple times over at this point. It's almost like a running gag. And so, it's an interesting franchise to talk about because there's like these subsections. It's not one big long 6 or 7 part series. It's these 4 or 5 movies, then these 3 movies, then and so it'll be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I mean the first 6 all go together in like one continuity, and then it's Halloween 1 and 2, and then H2O and Resurrection.
Well,
And
and
then,
three's kind of off on its own, it's kind of its own thing. So I mean,
yeah, and then you got the Rob Zombie 2 Halloween, his 2 Halloween films, and then the new trilogy goes back to the original just simply with the 1978 film. So there's a lot going on in this franchise. It's definitely a bit more complicated than some of the other like big franchises.
yeah, and I'm sure as we go on, we can kind of talk about. We'll be able to compare and contrast the different sort of subsections, and maybe not only at the end when we rank all 13 of the films, maybe we can have a discussion of which timeline, which section of the Halloween franchise is our favorite as well.
Rank the 5 different timelines we have.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah, rank the
I
timelines. We'll give them.
I
We'll
am
give them
game
each.
for whatever.
Yeah, we'll give them each unique little names to specify them, and then we'll rank them.
I am 100% game. why don't we get into a trailer for this film? We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and then we'll come back with some numbers, fun facts, and dive into the good stuff with our favorite characters, score, scene, and all that good stuff.
Sounds good.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago. Michael? Halloween.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. I think he'll come back.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Just talk.
Sure. The only reason she babysits is to have
Halloween.
Okay, Linda.
Come on out. Halloween. The night he came home.
On the night of Halloween, 1963, in the suburban Illinois town of Haddonfield, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally stabs his teenage sister Judith to death with a chef's knife. 15 years later, his psychiatrist Dr. Samuel Loomis drives with nurse Marion Chambers to the sanitarium where Michael is incarcerated to escort him to a court hearing. After Loomis exits their car to unlock the main gate, Michael jumps on the roof and attacks Marion. She runs from the vehicle, allowing Michael to steal the car and drive away. Michael makes his way back to Haddonfield, killing a mechanic and stealing his coveralls before stealing a white mask from a local hardware store. He begins stalking teenager Laurie Strode, whom he saw drop off a key at his long-abandoned childhood home that her father is attempting to sell. Laurie notices Michael throughout the day, but her friends Annie Brackett and Linda Vanderklok dismiss her concerns. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield and discovers that Michael has stolen Judith's tombstone from the local cemetery. He meets up with the town sheriff, Annie's father, Lee Brackett, and they begin searching for Michael. While they investigate the old Myers house, Loomis describes how he realized that Michael is pure evil. That night, Michael follows Annie and Laurie to their babysitting jobs. Laurie watches Tommy Doyle while Annie stays with Lindsay Wallace across the street. Michael spies on Annie and kills the Wallace family dog. Tommy spots Michael from the windows and thinks he is the boogeyman, but Laurie dismisses him. Annie later takes Lindsay to the Doyle house for the night so she can pick up her boyfriend while Laurie watches both kids. Michael hides in her car and strangles her before slitting her throat. Linda and her boyfriend Bob arrive at the Wallace house and find it empty. After they've had sex, Bob goes downstairs to get a beer from the kitchen, where Michael pins him to the wall with a chef's knife. Michael then poses as Bob in a ghost costume to taunt Linda, who teases him to no effect. Annoyed, she calls Laurie to find out what happened to Annie, but Michael strangles her to death with the phone cord while Laurie listens on the other end. Meanwhile, Loomis discovers the car which Michael had stolen the previous night and searches the streets. Worried by the phone call, Laurie goes to the Wallace house and finds her friend's bodies with Judith's tombstone in the upstairs bedroom. She runs to the hallway where Michael slashes her arm, causing her to fall over the banister. Dazed and injured, she narrowly escapes the house with him in pursuit. She makes it back to the Doyle house but realizes she has lost the keys to the front door. Tommy lets her in and she orders him and Lindsay to hide. Laurie calls for help only to find the phone is dead. Michael sneaks in through the window and attacks her again, but she stabs him in the neck with a knitting needle. Thinking Michael is dead, Laurie staggers upstairs to check on the children where Michael appears again. While Tommy and Lindsay hide in the bathroom, Laurie hides in the bedroom closet. Laurie stabs Michael in the eye with a coat hanger and then in the chest with his own knife. After she sends Tommy and Lindsay to the neighbor's house to call the police, Michael rises again. Seeing the children running from the house, Loomis investigates and sees Michael strangling Laurie. She breaks free by pulling his mask off, revealing his face. Loomis shoots him 6 times, knocking him off the balcony. When Loomis goes to check on the body, he is unsurprised to see that Michael has vanished. He stares off into the distance as a traumatized Laurie sobs in terror.
Wonderfully read, my good sir.
Yeah, exactly.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, how about I pop off some numbers here for you for this first film?
Sounds good.
Halloween had a budget of $325,000 in 1978, and the film grossed a total of $70 million, making it one of the most successful independent films of all time. So what are our inflation numbers for those two?
That $325,000 budget would be about $1.6 million of an investment in 2025. And the $70 million box office return would be about a $345 million box office return in 2025. So pretty staggering to think about.
God, you made 340% of your money back.
Essentially. And I mean, that doesn't even consider the fact that these horror franchises are mountains of, you know, back in the video rental days and the VHS days and, you know, the t-shirts and the merch and now the streaming licenses and, of course, the inevitable DVD sales, Blu-ray sales, 4K sales, box sets, you know, the figures, the masks, the apparel, you know, these things, considering how minuscule it is to invest in and make one of these films even today, the mountain of returns you get from a property like this. And of course, every Halloween, these movies come back in style. So the channels are broadcasting them. That's TV rights deals. All the streaming services want to carry at least a couple of the entries. That's streaming rights deals. They're just endlessly, you know, in the green on these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I was one of those people, you know, I bought a figure or two when I was younger, and I have the box set, you know, I had them on VHS and DVD and then Blu-ray, and I haven't upgraded to the 4K yet. I know you said you have some of the 4Ks. It's just, like you said, it's endless, like, return on investment for something like this.
Yeah.
I know it's in the contract. I believe it was Mustafa Akkad or Malek Akkad, either the father or son. It's in the agreement, like a contract, that Michael Myers cannot permanently be killed. So I mean, these movies are always going to come back a number of years down the road and be remade, or, you know, we're going to get a new timeline, or something is going to happen to where this character keeps coming back and these films keep being made.
Yeah, inevitably, you just can't get away from it.
And I know I seen something that they're making a Halloween standalone video game where supposedly the premise is you get to play certain scenes from some of the movies and, like, escape Michael Myers, or you get to be Michael Myers. I know he's a character in Dead by Daylight, but this is going to be like a standalone video
almost
game,
like a campaign mode almost.
Yes, and so I seen that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I was super excited about that. So we'll see how that
it'll be
turns
interesting
out.
how many scenarios where you're playing as Michael and how many you're playing as the victim.
Right. Can I
You know,
can I get away and survive? I don't know.
yeah, you play as Michael to kill all of the characters, and then you have to play as Laurie to not get killed by Michael.
I I know it's like a pre-development thing, so we'll see what happens with that.
That will be interesting.
I'll knock out some more numbers for you here. On Rotten Tomatoes, Halloween holds a 96% approval rating with an average rating of 8.6 out of 10. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 87 out of 100. It has a 7.7 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and 90% of our Google users like this film. So all around, I mean, this film is loved. It was praised by fans and critics.
Yeah, it's horror film royalty, and I will say also, hopefully, the background or thumbnail of this video is the classic pumpkin poster, because that's an excellent poster. You know, they don't do poster design like that anymore, where it's the pumpkin face and then you see the hand with the knife. That's just absolutely, legendary poster design.
I can absolutely sneak that in for you. Absolutely. My last two numbers here are the kill count and some screen time for you. So there's a total of 7 deaths in this film, including 5 people and 2 dogs, which averages to about 1 kill every 13 minutes. And then Michael Myers is on screen for roughly 9.5 minutes, or about 10% of the film.
Yeah, that adds up in it. And this is also the only film where you properly see a face reveal for Michael Myers as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we see
they kind of
kind of
dance
in the
around it in some of the
shadows
other
and
ones, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of blurred out, or it's in the shadows in later films, but we get it front and center in this one.
Yeah, the one shot. They brought in a unique actor just for that specific scene, which was fun.
Again, that is all I have for you on numbers. I got some good fun facts for you, though, and I have plenty of them. There is a lot on this first film.
Yeah, let's get into it.
My first one for you here is the film sold approximately 20,153,846 tickets during its initial theatrical release, and remains the most successful release of any Halloween film, and the third most successful film in the slasher genre when it comes to ticket sales, behind Scream from 1996 and Scream 2 from 1997. So that is in good company there.
That's pretty elite. That's pretty fantastic. Yeah, those Scream films, it's hard to remember, being a kid of how, like, the Scream movies felt big when you're a kid, but when you're a kid, every movie feels kind of big, but it's hard to realize just how big those were for their time.
Yeah, the horror, that the mid 90s was when the horror genre was kind of dying off. All the Friday the 13th ran, they ran the 80s, the Nightmare on Elm Streets kind of ran the 80s, Halloween films, and all the knockoff horror films that came because of those 3 franchises and many others. And then Scream kind of like reinvigorated, or like reignited the interest in the horror genre. So with Scream and Scream 2, those two were huge for the horror genre, and for Halloween to be neck and neck with them, that's awesome.
Yeah, very impressive.
This one's kind of fun. It's an effect one. The stabbing sound effect in this film is made with a knife stabbing into a watermelon.
Sounds about right.
You go, once you hear that, or like see that fun fact, I was reading it and then I rewatched the film. I had to listen closely, and I was like, oh yeah.
Anyone who's ever stabbed into or cut up a watermelon can probably kind of tell.
Yeah, that's pretty good. The original script, titled The Babysitter Murders, had the events take place over the space of several days. It was a budgetary decision to change the script to have everything happen on the same day, and it was decided that Halloween, the scariest night of the year, was the perfect night for this to happen. So they had discussions about doing it on other holidays and stuff, and it was John Carpenter who said that he didn't think that there was a film specifically titled or Halloween or set on that day. So that's why they decided to do this on Halloween and change the title to Halloween, and have, Michael Myers stalk the babysitters and kind of make the scariest night of the year even scarier.
Yes. And that's a stroke of genius, because I think even the film if the film was essentially exactly as it is, but was simply called The Babysitter Murders, there's no way that it would have the legacy that it has. There's no way it would have taken off the way it is, even if it was still just as good. If you give it a title like The Babysitter Murders and don't make it about Halloween and set on Halloween and called Halloween, then this thing does not capture the public consciousness the way it does. So excellent change there, and prudent planning on their part.
And I don't think even with your sequels either, like The Babysitter Murders Part 2, 3, 4, like I don't
no.
The Babysitter Murders,
No.
The Return of Michael Myers, like I
It's
just
easy to see, that a title like The Babysitter Murders comes from a place of, well, a movie was released called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so maybe you just want to give your movie a kind of macabre sounding title, The Babysitter Murders, the Teenage Stalker, or what have you. And so that's where it kind of comes from. But that's like a little too wordy and a little too specific, like it would not have done well for the franchise to try and be working that as a plot for 4, 5, 6 inches.
Yeah, as a standalone film, that title might be perfect. Even if you give it that title and set it, you could set it on almost any holiday. You could Halloween, or it could be any normal day in America, but it could be called The Babysitter Murders.
Mm-hmm. But Halloween becomes instantly iconic and timeless.
Yeah, everybody knows Halloween. Most people celebrate Halloween.
Yeah,
so
movies based on
perfect.
national holidays are kind of evergreen.
Yeah, exactly. My next one for you here is Carpenter worked with the cast to create the desired effect of terror and suspense. According to Jamie Lee Curtis, Carpenter created a fear meter because the film was shot out of sequence and she was not sure what her character's level of terror and fear should be in certain scenes. So Carpenter would say, here we're at about a 7, or here we're at a 6. And the scene we're going to shoot tonight, you're at about a 9.5, is what Jamie Lee Curtis remembers. So she had different facial expressions and scream volumes for each level on the fear meter that Carpenter had.
That's great. That's pretty excellent,
I think it would be super hard. I mean, I know a lot of films are shot out of sequence and then edited together later, but I just feel like, all right, now you're at a 7 right now, and you're scared. I need you to take it to a 9.5 in the next scene that we shoot. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
As long as as long as I like to, and maybe this is me being sort of, maybe I'm, overconfident or whatever, but I figure if you read the script well and the script well, like you kind of can put yourself in a place of like, yeah, this is before I get stabbed in the arm, but after I've fallen down the stairs, and I don't know, but maybe it would be I think I feel like it could be, as long as you know your script well and where your film, where what you're filming takes place in the cycle of it all. I feel like you could maybe pull it off.
I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, I'm not
trying
actor,
to make it sound easier than it is.
No,
there's a lot of difficulties in making a movie, but that doesn't sound like one that I think would be a very difficult thing to manage. I don't know.
Well, I'm not an actor, and I don't scream.
In a movie like Evil Dead, where it's kind of all in a cabin, I think it would maybe be like, you got to be careful about that because so much of it can be jumbled around in the editing and whatnot. But this one kind of has a progression. Like, you kind of know, like, oh, you're seeing him across the street versus, oh, he's coming through the closet versus now he's strangling you. Like, you can, I feel like that would be easy enough to kind of get yourself acclimated.
Yeah, take it to the next step and add that extra dose of fear.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm right there with you. I know exactly what you're saying. John Carpenter considered the hiring of Jamie Lee Curtis as the ultimate tribute to Sir Alfred Hitchcock, who had given her mother, Janet Leigh, legendary status in the film Psycho from 1960. Dr. Sam Loomis was named after Sam Loomis from Psycho. And then during the same period, Universal Studio producer and director Richard Franklin were trying to enroll Jamie Lee in the new production of Psycho 2 from 1983. And this was Jamie Lee Curtis's first feature film in which she was paid a reported $8,000 for her efforts in this first Halloween.
Yeah, I think she would have been awesome in Psycho 2. I think she would have been great. That's an underrated horror sequel as is. It's a really, really good movie, really good sequel to the original classic. But I think it would have been awesome if they'd been able to pull her off and get her in Psycho 2. That just would have been iconic.
Yeah, it would have been right after her starring in Halloween 2 and The Fog, and like she was slowly becoming a megastar at that point.
Mhm. And that just would have been perfect. But yes, I love the nods and references to Psycho. It's nice that like it's not one of these like, oh, it's the same character and it's the same universe and kind of thing, but it's a great kind of horror to horror connection to have the character be Sam Loomis here as well as Sam Loomis in Psycho. That character is an American and nowhere near being a doctor or psychiatrist or anything like that. So it's not like it could really be the same person, but it is a fun kind of, shared name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm pretty sure the Final Destination franchise and maybe the Scream franchise, I'm pretty sure they also have Loomises in there as well. Like Billy Loomis, something like that keeps coming to mind.
Yep. Sid's boyfriend in the first Scream.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the first two Final Destination movies has a Loomis in there as well. Or maybe it's a Hitchcock. I don't know, but like I know
Billy Hitchcock.
I know Final Destination did the reference thing too a little bit with the names. Yeah.
Yep, they had a Billy Hitchcock who was played by I can't remember his actual
was that
name,
Sean
but
William Scott? Was that Sean?
it was Stifler from the
Oh yeah,
American
that's Sean
Pie
William
film.
Scott. Okay,
Yeah, yep.
nice. Yeah.
Okay, see, we're on the same page.
Yeah,
Here.
yeah. We're tracking it. We're aging men trying to remember stuff from 20 years ago.
My next one for you here is Carpenter hired Tommy Lee Wallace as production designer, art director, location scout, and co-editor. Wallace created the trademark mask worn by Michael Myers throughout the film from a Captain Kirk mask purchased for $1.98 from a costume shop on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's such a, old school indie style filmmaking where they just got that mask and painted it, and like I think he said like he cut the eyes in a certain way, like did like little things, and it just kind of became this icon where nowadays, they'd spend up, 6 months on R&D to kind of design the perfect Myers mask. And we've seen, hey, not all Michael Myers masks are created equally. Everyone has their own opinions. I know there were big parts of H2O that were refilmed just specifically because they changed the mask design or felt like they flubbed the mask design. And if you're eagle-eyed, there's a few moments where you can kind of tell old mask, new mask, replacement mask, and all that stuff. And I think there's a TV edit of the movie that uses additional footage of Michael in that movie that has like the other mask. So like there's there's always like struggles with the Halloween mask designs, and it feels like it shouldn't be as hard of a problem as it is.
Yeah, I mean it was either one of the behind the scenes, things they said is they had a clown mask and they had the Captain Kirk mask, and they ended up going with the Captain Kirk mask. And like you said, they cut the eye holes a little bigger, they painted it white, and I think it was the absolute right choice. I mean,
because it just becomes this blank slate kind of a thing, and like an old like Venetian mask or something like that. Instead of like the clown thing, like I wonder if it was the same clown mask that Kid Michael wears in the opening of the movie. I wonder if that was the clown mask that was up for debate or a version of that. I wonder. I don't know if they've ever released a picture of like what the other contender was officially. I know it was always a clown mask. I don't know if there's like an actual photo of it, but like it's like, yeah, it's like that's creepy and whatnot. But like clowns being creepy is sort of like superficially creepy. Like you see someone in a clown mask in broad daylight and it's kind of just like weird. But you see that blank white mask and it's just like, oh gosh, it's unnerving wherever you see it in any conditions.
Yeah, they knocked it out of the park with that. I mean, I love it, but that and something as simple as the hockey mask from Friday the 13th are like my two favorite like horror icon masks that are out.
Absolutely.
In this film, many of the actors wore their own clothes to film in, and Jamie Lee Curtis's wardrobe was purchased at a JCPenney for around $100 for everything.
Sheesh. Those were
this
the
film
days,
did not have a lot of money.
Well, and again, nowadays, how much do they spend just on the costume department or anything like that? It's like there's no there's like no willingness or apparatus by which movies can really be made on like these shoestring budgets. Everything's got to go through the studio process, and you have to have a department lead for everything, and you have to have each department budgeted for this, and then they make all the decisions. It's not just like, oh, hey, you're the actress, go buy clothes that you want to wear, and that the director agrees on, and we're good. You know, it just doesn't seem like it can work that way anymore.
And when you're on a $325,000 budget, you know, you try to be a little modest with your money. You try to penny pinch anywhere you can.
Yeah. A couple of the guys in Reservoir Dogs wore some of their own clothes in that movie.
I would be okay with that. If you want to cast me and I can wear my own clothes and you're still gonna pay me, like, I'm cool with that. I am 100% a-okay.
You know, whatever. I'm in a movie, right? You know?
Right. A Halloween was filmed in 20 days over a 4-week period in May of 1978. So this film, for the masterpiece that it is, to be filmed in 20 days.
That it's crazy to think about it, because it's such this like iconic film that has so much going for it, and feels like there's so much, you know, there's clearly so much talent involved in it, that it's hard to imagine it as being this sort of low budget, very quickly filmed, a lot of young people just kind of stringing stuff together and doing a lot of things. Like, it's hard to think about how like guerrilla filmmaking it was, and how quick and ugly and everything the pace had to be and the schedule had to be, when it comes out as what feels like this really sort of fine-tuned, you know, almost perfect movie.
Well, yeah, if it was filmed in May and it released in October of the same year, so you figure that's roughly about a 5-month turnaround to film it, edit it, score it, you know, and then get the word out to release it and everything. So I mean that.
Yeah, well, lucky for
it's a
them,
quick
they didn't.
turnaround.
You know, lucky for them, they didn't have 100 CGI creatures to put into every background of the movie or anything like that. You know, back then the footage the footage you shot was basically the footage you had. You just had to, you know, cut it and color time it. There wasn't like, oh, the visual effects process. Like, oh, there's no visual effects in this movie. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it quite a bit easier back then, but 20 days and then a 5-month turnaround, still pretty good. A lot of the time when you see that for movies, it doesn't come out half as good as this film did.
Yeah, no kidding.
The movie that Tommy and Lori are watching is The Thing from Another World from 1951, which John Carpenter went on to direct a remake for that titled The Thing in 1982. So I have definitely seen The Thing that his version or his remake of The Thing. Have you seen the original The Thing from Another World from 51?
I have not, until about, and this is to, you know, and I'll be ashamed to say this, but until about 4 years ago, 4 years ago, I would say, I hadn't seen I hadn't even seen John Carpenter's The Thing. I watched it for the first time on 4K disc like 4 years ago. I borrowed it from a buddy. So yeah, it's pretty wild. It's a great one though, but no, I've never seen the original.
I watched The Thing, the 1982 remake, as probably a mid-teenager, maybe like 16, 17. And I fell in love with that film. And then I found out it was a remake. I didn't know right away, of course. So I've only seen the original from 51. I've only seen it once. So I do need to give that another once over, because we're gonna.
Is it any good? I imagine it's pretty good in its own ways.
I like it, yeah, for being, you know,
it's very different from the 82 one, right?
Yes, it is. It is. It's not as much. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's not as much as like a John Carpenter's 82 one is like a more of a creature feature type design for The Thing,
horror type thing.
Yeah, and the 51 it's a little more, quite a bit more tame than that, but I believe it's shorter by 15 minutes or so. I could be wrong on that, but I liked it the first time I seen it.
Okay. Interesting.
So it's definitely worth a watch if you have an hour and a half.
That's good.
All right, I got 2 more for you here, and these 2 are kind of related to the legacy of this first Halloween film. Years after its debut, Halloween is considered by many critics as one of the best films of 1978. And in 2017, Complex Magazine named Halloween the best slasher film of all time. And the following year, Paste listed it the best slasher film of all time. Well, Michael Myers was ranked the greatest slasher villain of all time.
Yeah, I mean, hard to really debate with anyone that wants to praise this film. I remember when I was a kid, somewhere around, I want to say 2004, 2005, there was one of the channels, maybe VH1 or something like that, that did a 100 best horror movies of all time. And I remember the original Halloween ended up coming out as number one for whatever that program was. And that was a really, really proud moment for me as a fan.
Especially being a lifelong fan since a young age, one of your favorite horror movies, it's nice to see them appreciated, because horror movies nowadays do not get the appreciation that some of them deserve.
100%.
My last one for you here, this is a long one, so bear with me. It's a lot of awards and where this film has ranked in like American Film Institute and things like that. So Halloween was nominated for the Saturn Award for Best Horror Film by the Academy of Science Fiction and Fantasy and Horror Films in 1979, but lost to The Wicker Man from 1973.
Oh.
I haven't seen that.
Sorry.
I haven't seen that original Wicker Man. So
no, this doesn't deserve to lose to The Wicker Man.
I haven't seen either, I should say. I haven't seen the original Wicker Man or the remake.
What? Fine. No further comments.
In 2001, Halloween ranked number 68 on the American Film Institute TV program 100 Years, 100 Trills.
Very nice.
The film was number 14 on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments from 2004. I remember watching that. They used to play that during Halloween season as well, and that has since disappeared. I mean, you can find the episodes that are like 45, 50 minutes long. I think it's a 5-part thing on YouTube, and watch the 100 Scariest Movie Moments counted down from 100 to 1.
Nice.
It's a fun watch, but it's only relative to films up to 2004. So
yeah. So it's kind of missing the boat.
It's a little bit behind. I wish they would re-release something like that nowadays.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to see something focused on just like new millennium horror. Even that would be fun.
That's one of our next episodes. 100 Scariest Movie Moments.
Yeah.
Similarly, the Chicago Film Critics Association named it the 3rd scariest film ever made. So there it gets some praise. It did not say what number 2 and number 1 were. I'm guessing The Exorcist might be in that 2 or number
The
1
Exorcist is always at the top of the list.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that one's up there. In 2006, Halloween was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And in 2008, the film was selected by Empire magazine as one of the 500 greatest movies of all time. And then lastly, in 2010, Total Film selected the film as one of the 100 greatest movies of all time. So this film, it's getting love from everywhere, even though, rankings differ, but it's getting a lot of love from everywhere.
Yeah, I mean it's a good one. It deserves all the praise that it gets.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. I mean, there were other accolades at this film. It was ranked number 6 here or number 4 here, but I would have been here talking about it for another 20 minutes for how much this film was nominated or what certain websites rank it. So I just chose some of the important ones that we would know, like the National Film Registry and things like that.
Yeah, that's always good. I want to give a shout out to the National Film Registry in general, because that's just a cool idea. The idea that movies become so important that they get that the government takes a hand in making sure they get preserved properly for the ages. That's very nice.
Absolutely. That is something that, I mean, you would never think of hearing about. So I absolutely agree with you. That is all I have for you in the section for my fun facts. So, Chris, why don't you, if you have nothing on fun facts or anything, would you like to dive into your favorite character for this original Halloween?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite character is Dr. Sam Loomis. I don't think that would come as a surprise to very many people, but he is, he's not really the protagonist of the film. I mean, in some ways, him and Laurie are kind of the co-protagonists, and in some ways, he's kind of the hero, and she's kind of the hero. But no one really wins in this one in a sense. So, but he's the character. He's got this Ahab and Moby Dick kind of sense about him. He's kind of like hunting Michael and trying to understand Michael, and in some ways, he's the only one who understands him, and he's trying to get other people to appreciate the danger that Michael represents, and so he's got that. There's an angle of his story of like the one sane man who's trying to tell everyone what's happening, and no one wants to believe him because he just sounds like a kook. So he's got a lot of different elements going into his character, and Donald Pleasance just gives an iconic performance. So hands down, my favorite character in the film.
I figured we might be one and the same on that one. I chose Dr. Loomis as well. And I mean, he's just this guy. I mean, he's a doctor who he knows he has a feeling about a patient. He believes that he's pure evil, and everybody just thinks he's kind of a loon. Everybody thinks he's out there, doesn't believe him. And I mean, even when he calls like the police department from the phone early on in the film, he's like, you have to believe me, officer. He's coming to Haddonfield. And then he's like, if you don't, it's your funeral. And like, nobody believes him until finally it's too late. And then by the end of this film and the beginning of Halloween 2, the sheriff and Laurie and other people are starting to see it and believe him. But he's just a great character in this. Donald Pleasance, as you said, delivers a great performance. Some of the quotes he says in this we'll get into, but he just delivers them with such power, and like you feel the emotion in his voice. And I mean, he goes on to be one of the most important characters of the franchise. But for this first film, he stands out. Laurie Strode is great in her first role, or Jamie Lee Curtis is great in her first role as Laurie Strode. I liked Sheriff Brackett, kind of, being the non-believer and kind of like calling bullshit until he realizes that it's not. But Dr. Loomis, he takes the cake in this one almost easily. He just gives a great performance.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So I will go ahead and give you my favorite score for the film, and I always had trouble picking because the main title, the Halloween theme, is so iconic that almost everyone is going to choose that. But I think the whole score for this first film is iconic. To Laurie's theme when she's walking to school or walking over to check on like Bob and Linda and Annie, and then the shape stalks was the other one that I have trouble when Michael is chasing Laurie back to the Doyle house.
Yeah, those are the three. Those are the three great ones. The main title, Laurie's theme, the shape stalks. Those are all just like absolute. Like they could each be an iconic theme in another movie, and you get all three of them here. John Carpenter absolutely, like the score that John Carpenter provided for this film just elevates it into the stratosphere.
And it's crazy that he showed this film to a producer, like they had a screening for it, and he hadn't done the music yet. And they were like, this film's not scary at all. Like they didn't want to dish out the money for like advertising for it or to put it into theaters. And after he actually scored the film and he brought it back to that same producer and they had a screening of it, they absolutely loved the film. So, and they were willing to put the money in the advertising and put it into theaters. And I thought that was a crazy story that like music can make that big of a difference. But when you listen to this soundtrack, the soundtrack for this film it's a classic. It's an absolute classic. And I mean, my favorite score for the film was easily like the main title is the one I'm going to go with for this first film. It's probably between this main title or the Halloween theme and the Godzilla like main theme are like my two favorite movie themes of all time. And they're like, this is in the top 10 for being like one of the best horror movie themes of all time, one of the most recognizable horror movie themes of all time. It's just John Carpenter killed it with this main theme and this entire soundtrack. So I went with the main title as my favorite.
likewise, and I think it is the most iconic horror theme music. There are stories about screenings of the movie where the kids in the audience or younger people in the audience weren't covering their eyes. They were holding their hands over their ears because the music was scary and the sounds were more scary than anything they were seeing, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, that I had never heard that, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, that was in one of the making of documentaries I watched about this movie once, and it's like that's an insane thing. But yeah, like sometimes though, I remember even when I was a kid, and I would get scared by movies. Like the thing that was getting you was the jump and how scary it was, the sound of it, not necessarily what you were seeing. And so different kids react in different ways. But yeah, the score, there's plenty of footage in this movie. If you just take that footage of Laurie kind of just slowly walking and things like that, and you were to just take the music out, it's kind of just like dead air. It's kind of just like dead footage. Like we're just kind of walking along with her for no particular reason with nothing really happening for a bit. But then you put the music in there, and then it just becomes this utterly eerie thing, and it's like her, like the beginning of her day. It has just like foreboding sense of dread to it, and like nothing is happening beyond the mundane of like her walking and then her, the kid she babysits coming and talking to her. But it's just something about it. It's just like there's this haunting presence, and that changes it. That changes the dynamics of the movie completely.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you, and I believe we're in agreement on these first two, with our favorite
Yes.
character being Dr. Loomis and our favorite score being the main title.
Yeah. The music is, it's famously been said that the score is the soul of a movie, and so when you don't have the soul in the movie, you're gonna lose a vital piece of the essence.
And a film like this is the perfect like definition of that.
Exactly.
So let's see if we can match up and go 3 for 3 here. What was your favorite scene in the film?
Oh, so I don't think we'll match up here because my favorite scene was actually the final confrontation when Michael sits up behind Laurie after seemingly having been completely killed, and he sits up that one last time and then attacks her and is choking her out. In the meanwhile, Loomis has figured out that Michael is here, or Michael is around, and he sees the kid, so we've got the warning, and he shows up just in time to just, the whole time you're watching the movie, you're probably thinking in the audience like someone just needs to shoot this guy. And of course Loomis shows up and no questions asked, doesn't tell him to stop, doesn't do anything. He just opens fire, and the heroes finally get a definitive win against Michael in this movie for a change. And to me, that's just like that climactic scene is perfect, and it leads right into the iconic ending of the movie. So I do think that the film really peaks right there at the end, and so that's my favorite sequence.
Okay, I can't disagree with you there about that being a great sequence. It's not the one I chose. It's close to the one I chose. I ended up choosing where Laurie goes to the Doyle or the Wallace house, and she's kind of looking around, and she starts seeing all of her dead friends, Annie, Linda, Bob, and she gets scared and kind of runs across the hall, and you just see Michael's mask behind her just faintly start appearing.
Yeah, that is an absolutely iconic moment. That might be the top moment of the movie. And they used a single spotlight that they just well, I don't know if spotlight's the right term. I'm not a lighting technician, but they had one single light that they slowly illuminated right on the mask to catch the mask and slowly illuminate the mask behind her as he sort of faded in.
And it's such a creepy presence. It's such a simple effect, but it works wonders. And it's from there on to where Michael, he stabs Laurie in the arm and she falls over the stairs, and it's when the theme of the Shape Stalk soundtrack kicks in, and he kind of like chases her and breaks through the door, and she has to run back to the Doyle house. It's from there to where she gets into the Doyle house and like slowly realizes that like I believe it's like the windows open because she can see the blinds moving from the wind, and like she kind of like ducks down and realizes that like he could be in the house, or like Michael's already in the house chasing after her. It's like that whole chase sequence was like my favorite sequence in the film. But I mean, like Laurie like being in the closet and Michael kind of breaking through the closet and going after her, like that's a nominee, like with the ending that you said where Michael sits up and kind of has like his final confrontation in the film, like that's a nominee. So like you almost can't go wrong in this film with picking your favorite scene if it's between Michael and Laurie or having Dr. Loomis in the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, and you can't undersell the opening POV shot of the movie either. That's kind of iconic in its own ways, and it's this, you know, the long tracking shot, and the hand puts the mask on and then goes in and stabs the sister. I remember when I was a kid, I got a video camera and I tried to like recreate that, like the whole like stalking around the house, going into the house, and like I think I like fake pretended to like stab my cousin, you know, like it was just like one of those things. It was like, you know, it's just so cool of a shot and a sequence to open the film with, and then you reveal that the killer was a little kid. You know, there's a lot of candidates for iconic sequences and scenes in this movie.
Yeah, I wish I could have been an audience member to see like the shock opening, to see that it was a little kid who was actually killing his older sister. Or, you know, it would have been a nice, like, just to see go back and see the reaction of the audience at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll give you my favorite quote, and I'll let you go first on our last one for our favorite kill or death scene in the film.
Okay.
And my favorite quote, it's not a surprise that it comes from Dr. Loomis. And I went with the long one in the film, and probably the most famous one from the film, where Dr. Loomis, he's talking to Sheriff Brackett, and he goes, "I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, not even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." And the way that Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis delivers that line, you know, they're in the Myers house. It couldn't have been done better, you know. He just delivers it, and it gives you goosebumps, because you can almost feel what he's feeling, and he just delivers the lines so incredibly well that it hit perfectly, and I don't think that I could have chosen anything else for this film.
Yeah, in a right and just world, that would have been the clip played when Donald Pleasance won his Oscar for this movie. but
Yeah.
but that's a clear 1A choice. I went with I have a 1B choice that I picked in case you picked that one, because it's kind of like another good monologue from Loomis, where he says, "I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient, waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. Now you can either ignore it, or you can help me to stop it." And, you know, that's kind of great as well. You know, again, Donald Pleasance, just, you give him a monologue about evil and death, and he just absolutely goes to town with it. My favorite kind of single line dialogue exchange, you know, when Sheriff says, you know, they find the dog that's been killed and eaten, and he goes, you know, "A man wouldn't do that," and he just goes, "This isn't a man." Like, one line, and it clearly communicates what his opinion of Michael Myers is, and what the stakes are. And so I love stuff like that as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, even in the beginning, when Michael steals the car from him, he goes and he's like, "The evil is gone from here. The evil is gone." And the emotion that he puts into, like, he has a good kind of, like, when he's speaking, or like even when he's yelling these things, he has, like, it seems like there's so much emotion in his voice. It sounds good coming
And
from him.
yeah, and his cadence is just kind of memorable. You know, I always think, you know, a line that'll, like, you know, randomly germs into your brain and just comes up, you know, is "For God's sakes, he can't drive a car. He was doing very well last night." Like, I love the way he says that, you know. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons, you know, just the way, like Loomis raging is just like, it's a great energy. You know, Donald Pleasance just absolutely kills it as this character.
Absolutely. In this first film, I know we continue to get him in Halloween 2 and 4 and 5. But I think in the Halloween franchise that this is his best performance, and he delivers a plus 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 like performance in this film.
100%. 100%.
So for our favorites, our last favorite category, what was your favorite death scene or kill from the film?
It's a tough one, but I wasn't fully prepared for this question. I think it's Annie in the car, actually, because it's such a long buildup, and there's a lot of moments in the sort of Annie sequence of the movie, the sort of Annie episode, where you see Michael, popping in and out of the backgrounds and through the windows, and it feels like every time I watch the movie, I catch another moment where Michael's secretly in the background that maybe I don't remember catching every time I see the movie or anything. If you're not paying attention, if you're looking at your phone, like, some of those are going to sneak by you, and then and you get the sort of the clue of, because the door on the car is locked when she tries it, so then she goes back and gets the keys, and then she goes back and the door just opens, and she kind of like has that moment of like, wait a minute, like, I didn't have to unlock the car, and then like she's like messing around with like the fog up on the window, and then he's just right there behind her and just chokes her to death, and then slits her throat for good measure. And it's just it's just a very sort of brutal sequence without an ounce of blood being shed.
Absolutely. And if you're not paying close attention, you don't know when the knife comes down, you don't know if he stabbed her suddenly or slit her throat, or like you don't notice until you see her body later. Like if you don't catch it, you don't see that it was a quick slit. And I like how that is a very well done like kill scene. And it, like you said, it's not very graphic. It's just the scene is built up, it's intense. And like I always got that as a kid. That was one of the first things I said as a kid when I was younger. I remember is she went to go get her keys, but she didn't unlock the car. And then you see him pop up in the back, and it's like, yep, I could have seen that coming. Like, you can almost predict, like, yeah, she's a goner. She's going to get her boyfriend to fool around. So, sex, drugs, all that in horror movies, it's a no-no.
Exactly.
I ended up going with Bob being left hanging on the door, and it's just because him and his girlfriend have just got done fooling around. He goes downstairs for a beer, and of course, you hear noises, and what does he do? He goes to investigate. That's a big no-no in these type of movies. So he ends up opening the door. Michael pops out, grabs him by his throat, and just picks him up, raises him against it, and you see the knife raise up. And Bob gets stabbed, and he's kind of just left hanging there on the door. And you see Michael kind of take a step back or stand there and kind of cock his head to the side and like almost like admiring his work. So I just think that is like a very like creepily and like eerie scene for him to be like admiring what he just done. So that's what I chose for my favorite kill in the film.
Yeah. He makes a crass joke earlier in the movie about in reference to Lindsay, the little girl that's being babysitted, about ripping her clothes off, and as soon as he did that, you're like, well, this guy's gonna get what he deserves. He's gonna get killed. And but yeah, the profile view of the knife impaled through him isn't a very convincing effect these days, and maybe we can debate all day long of if he would be kind of perfectly impaled that way from just the center body impalement, but the visual is excellent. And apparently the cue for Michael to kind of look and turn his head like he was curious of what he was seeing, it came from John Carpenter, because he would see his dog do things like that, like look, and when his dog was confused, would kind of turn his head one way, turn his head the other way. And so he thought that would just be very eerie for Michael to do that after killing someone, like he almost as if he doesn't quite understand that like he's done something and now this person is dead when they were previously alive.
Yeah, and I mean, a dishonorable mention for kills, as always, is the dog, because god dang it, Every time somebody kills a dog in a movie, it pisses me off. And Michael seems to be
Yeah.
one of the only ones of the main horror slasher villains who does not have a problem killing dogs.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael's a dog killer for sure, and that's not cool, But doesn't stop people from liking Michael Myers as well,
No.
as a villain though. But
In one of these movies, I would like to see a dog take a nice chomp out of him. Michael can still get the better, but let the dog put up a fight.
yeah, we need to, where's John Wick to take revenge for the dogs that Michael has killed?
I think Michael still wins that battle.
I mean, Keanu Reeves is getting up there in age. So is Michael, though. You never know.
Keanu Reeves isn't superhuman.
Yeah. His aim's pretty good.
This is true. Couple headshots will leave you wondering.
Yeah.
That is all I have for our favorites category. We won't be ranking the films as we go through, but something we could do in substitute, maybe we could rank like the masks as we go through by each film.
Yeah, kind of talk about where they went right or wrong, or anything that, or just a compare and contrast, because there's certain things you like and dislike about certain masks, and sometimes some of the like I think each mask has its good angles and bad angles, and some moments where it looks kind of better than other moments, and things like that.
Yeah, some in the shadows, some look better, and they're. I mean, clearly this first film, it's perfect. I think the mask is perfect. I think the characterization, I guess you could say, of Michael Myers in this film is one. I think he's played spectacularly for for the best that you could do with a silent stalker or a silent serial killer or murderer in a film like
the
this.
heavy breathing always wigged me out as a kid, because they don't do it really in the other movies after this, where you kind of just like hear Michael's kind of audible breathing sometimes, and oh man, I always just, it's so unnerving to me.
That was one of the things I liked about the ending scene, when we're kind of going from like house to house, like where Michael had been, is you hear the heavy breathing, and we end in front of the Myers house, and you hear his breathing before we cut to the ending credits. That was one of the things I really liked about that like little sequence, was the breathing. It kind of adds like a spooky or like a eerie vibe to it, kind of like saying like the boogeyman is everywhere, or like you don't know where he is. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
he's still out there, and he'll be back. And and I think this film, even though it launched a franchise, this film is one of those kind of iconic classes that you can watch this one in a bottle. You can watch this one as a standalone, and it's a horror classic. You can watch it without any regard to any of the sequels, and it almost maybe enhances its quality or preserves its quality in some ways, where when you get to certain sequels of certain movies, it kind of waters down the material. But this one is an iconic standalone great entry on its own, regardless of whether you continue on with any of the sequels or not.
Absolutely. So why don't we go ahead and we'll knock out some final thoughts. We'll get into what we're talking about next week, and then we will go ahead and get out of here. So if you want to blast off on some final thoughts for us.
Yeah, I mean,
what else can you say? No.
Yeah, classic horror film, obvious masterpiece, stands on its own, inspired an entire genre. Psycho was very much sort of the grandfather of the horror genre, or the slasher genre, so to speak. But Halloween is very much, the father. Yes, there are entries like Texas Chainsaw Massacre that sort of predate it. It's not the first horror film, but that sort of classic slasher icon. Leatherface wasn't really that, in the same way that you can look at Michael, and from Michael Myers you see the sort of direct lineage to your Jasons, and to an extent your Freddys and your Ghost Faces, and things of that nature. So I mean, it's a big nexus point and a big genesis point for a whole slasher genre of films.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I was going to go, is a lot of people that they'll bring up Psycho. Another one I've heard people bring up is The Peeping Tom. I've never seen that film, but I've heard a lot about it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas. They say those were all very influential and kind of like a peek into the horror or slasher genre. But Halloween is the film that like kick-started it. It gave it a kick in the ass, and like it boomed from here with, and then Friday the 13th, and after those kind of two films, it just spawned rip off or knockoff after knockoff or rip off and sequel to this, sequel to that. So I mean that this is probably easily one of the most influential horror films of all time. It's one of the, in my mind, it's one of the best and like one of the classic horror films of all time. It's what got me into horror. And I mean, when it comes down to it, like it's a widely influential horror film. It was like, again, it was largely responsible for the popularization of slasher films in the late 70s, 80s. It popularized many tropes that have become like synonymous in the slasher genre, like the final girl and killing off characters who are like substance abusers or like
Yeah,
sexually like.
the sex equals death and the virgin final girl, all those tropes are there, like accidentally or not accidentally. There were some people who in the earlier days would say that this movie was sort of like coded in this like conservative kind of thing of like, oh, if you do bad things you get killed, and if you're sort of pure you get to live. The kid lives, the woman lives, the virgin lives. All the kids that are drinking and doing drugs and having sex all get killed, like it's punishment. Like all these sort of perspectives of it. There's a lot of layers to the interpretation of it.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones to use like an actual theme song when the killer's on screen, or like the killer POV. Like this film introduced a lot, like
The dead body not being there when you look back. I don't know if this was the first movie to ever do something like that, but it's certainly one of the most iconic examples.
yeah, there's a theme of the absent parents, that they followed in like Friday the 13th, and then like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Kind of they like took the blueprint and reversed it, where the parents are there and they're the ones who like created the killer or murderer. And there's just like there's so many nods to this later on down the road in films like A Nightmare on Elm Street or Scream and stuff like that, for things that this film kind of blasted off and like trends that this film started. So it's an absolute classic. And when I was younger, it was my hands down favorite movie of all time. And I mean, it's still hard to say it is, with how many movies have come out and like how big of a fan I've become of like the Godzilla franchise and things like that. So I mean, I will have to see as we run through this franchise where our rankings lie at the end of all
Yeah.
this and stuff. But
Well,
this is easily a classic and one of the best horror films ever made.
yes, and one more thing that we were going to do as a little epilogue to the episode is the compare and contrasting with the Friday the 13th franchise, film by film. We weren't going to rank them we weren't going to rank these as we went, but so far, first Friday the 13th versus first Halloween, I'll say it's short and sweet. I absolutely prefer the first Halloween to the first Friday the 13th.
Yes, I mean, Friday the 13th has admitted to being a ripoff or a knockoff of this original film. So I mean, I'm gonna take I'm gonna take Dr. Loomis over Steve Christie. I'm gonna take Laurie Strode over Alice. I'm gonna
I'm
take
gonna
this.
take the Halloween music over the Harry Manfredini. I'm gonna take the John Carpenter. Even though Friday the 13th has a great score as well, that the John Carpenter is just insanely iconic.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Michael Myers over Mrs. Voorhees. I mean
Mm-hmm.
this
100%.
this film. I mean, I don't want to say it trumps Friday the 13th, because Friday the 13th gave us a good film that turned into one of my favorite franchises, but it
Part one
wasn't.
versus part one, Friday the 13th is clearly on the mold, in the blueprint of Halloween. The sort of prologue of a violent thing happening to kind of set up a mystery, and then your main story, the isolated teens, the kind of virginal good one lives, the sex addicts and drug addicts get killed, that sort of thing. And it just has the great twist to it of the mother of the kid of a killed kid being the killer. But I think, piece for piece, so far, the first Halloween is a far superior film to the first Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it this way. If I was gonna rank it, say out of 10, I mean, I would put this first Halloween film at a 10 out of 10, and I might rank the first Friday the 13th a little low, but maybe like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. It's quite a bit slower. It has the special effects, that it has great kill
The
scenes and
gore is
gore.
definitely superior. Yeah.
But when it comes to characterization, killer, and like other like side characters and stuff, I'm gonna take Annie and Tommy Doyle and Laurie Strode and Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. When it comes to anything but the gore and kill scenes, I think Halloween wins that battle over the original Friday the 13th.
100%, and that's not an insult to Friday the 13th.
No, but this is going to be fun, kind of talking about what we like, one film to another when it comes to each film in the franchise, going 1 for 1 or 2 for 2. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, 100%.
But that is all I have on this first Halloween film. So, I mean, before we get out of here, clearly, as we stated, this film made a boatload of money. So, of course, it had to get a sequel. And this film was followed by Halloween 2, which was released October 30th in 1981. And I'm excited to get to that one because as a kid, I watched these two back to back all the time. I mean, I loved this first and second film. I didn't really watch the third one a lot, but I mean, these first two were easily two of my favorite films of all time when I was younger. So on the rewatch, I can't wait to see where I put it and like how I compare it to this first Halloween film and then how I compare it to the second Friday the 13th. That's going to be fun as we continue on.
Yeah, agreed.
So before we get out of here, Chris, I want to say thank you. I am 100% glad that we chose to do this one this year, kind of as our lead up to Halloween season and spooky season as we roll through August, September, and October. So again, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, always glad to be here. Looking forward to talking about this franchise over the next couple of months.
Absolutely. So thank you again. Thank anyone who's out there listening. Please, if you're listening on Spotify, vote on our polls under the episodes and just give us your opinion. It helps. I love hearing what other people think, or leave a comment what you thought of the episode. And it's always appreciated. I love it. We post the polls for a reason. So again, thank you. Thank anyone who's out there listening. On our next episode, we continue with Halloween 2 from 1981. But until next time.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.